There was once an anonymous user simply known as Ghost.x, who became popular because of his dark and creepy content. He was all over social media and gained huge followings across various platforms. He was first known for sharing snippets of gory scenes from horror movies, and then his posts became videos of real gruesome crimes and accidents. His accounts were banned countless times because of his disturbing posts that were often too horrid and inappropriate, but his pages and profile would simply reappear again despite of consistently getting barred. Nobody knew how he was able to bypass the rules of regulations of these platforms, and it made him an iconic character of defiance for a lot of people. Ghost.x never revealed his face nor his real name. He used to post various snippets of horror films where he would ask the viewers to guess where the clip was from. As a big classic horror fan, I started to follow him and participated in answering the questions in his posts. He then started citing some trivial facts about the films and related them to real events. Eventually, his posts completely changed from fictional tales to actual disturbing cases of real criminals and their victims. He started sharing videos of horrible terrorist crimes such as clips of victims being beheaded, skinned alive, or stabbed to death. His posts grew darker and darker to a point that he was sharing contents that should not be available to the public. Ghost.x was hacking police records and files, and then he would share the shocking footages and pictures of their investigations, including the identities of the victims and their perpetrators. Needless to say, he was already accounted for serious legal offenses. However, Ghost.x was able to skillfully hide his IP and masked his real location that even the authorities couldn't trace who he was or where he was from. Ghost.x seemed to enjoy this attention from the authorities, and he began provoking them by posting pictures of him being on the actual sites of crucial investigations. He would often pose as a bystander and sometimes even breach the protected parameters of the scene of the crime just to take pictures and share it. Because of his highly controversial posts, a forum thread was made where the people were trying to guess about his whereabouts and true identity. However, none of them were proven to be true. Just like other individuals who garnered popularity in social media, I saw him as nothing more but an anonymous person who shared edgy content for likes and views. However, the real horror unfolded when he began using Snapchat. I never really used Snapchat too often, but I was intrigued with his posts when one of my friends named Barry showed it to me. Barry was also a horror enthusiast and was quite fond of bizarre things. I got to know about Ghost.x because of him as well. The reputation and character of this anonymous person immediately caught the interest of many people within the platform. In just a few days, his Snap score grew significantly because thousands of people were viewing his stories. He still refused to show his real face for obvious reasons. He was wearing a Halloween skull mask in his profile picture. Ironically, the logo of the platform was quite fitting for his name. The expiring posts in Snapchat also worked in his favor due to the explicit nature of the things he shared. Since stories are deleted after 24 hours, the evidence of his controversial images and clips were regularly removed by the platform itself. He was updating his stories quite regularly, and the contents in his Snapchat account were different from his other social profiles. Snapchat was relatively lenient with the rules about the contents of every post, and Ghost.x's sick taste for humor was getting shared to his fans much easier than before. He was posting pictures with the questions on the labels like how he did with the movie clips. But this time around, he was the one who was taking the photos and videos instead of simply sharing others' contents. His first Snapchat posts were simply trivial to say the least. One was a picture of a glass jar with a finger inside it, along with a caption, "Real or not?" It looked to me that they were fake. He also showed his vast collection of disturbing things for the sake of sticking to his dark theme. Compared to his daring acts such as breaking into actual crime scenes, I thought that showing preserved body parts in jars were relatively tame. However, I was proven wrong when he decided to reveal where they came from. In his story, Ghost.x posted a close-up picture part by part while quickly deleting the last one just a few minutes after the other. Like his other posts, there was a caption saying "real or not." His followers started discussing it in the forum thread, and I was also quite intrigued by it. They took screenshots of each story and combined all of the images. The completed picture was a dead body of a man that was laid on a dumpster. He was missing some fingers and his ears. By the looks of it, the body was at least a few days old. Barry was also in the thread, and he recognized the wall behind the piles of garbage. He joined the discussion and said that it was a back alley that was fairly close to the bar where he was working at. A proof of it was the logo in the plastic bags which belonged to an establishment nearby. To everyone's surprise, Ghost.X himself was also watching over the thread. He congratulated everybody for figuring out what the picture was, but it seemed that he was not expecting anyone to pinpoint its location. The others enthusiastically replied to him and asked who the body belonged to, and we were extremely baffled by his response. He said that the body belonged to a journalist who stalked him in an attempt to write a story about him. In his own words, he said that he did not appreciate that. It was the first time that someone was able to know who he was and even located him, and so he dealt with it. At that point, we realized that Ghost.X himself was the one who killed the man. He even shared a picture of the ear and missing fingers in a glass jar displayed in his shelf. Despite of his dark humor and controversial posts, nobody expected that he would go so far as to commit murder. Everyone was shocked by his confession and logged out of the thread immediately. Unfortunately for Barry, he nonchalantly revealed the location of his workplace a while ago. The body of the journalist in the dumpster was covered by the local news on the following day, and a few people from the forum came forward to disclose some information to the authorities. Ghost.X deleted his replies on thread, but those who were following at the time took screenshots of his confession. They began to diligently search for this anonymous murderer. This time around, they concentrated their search within the city. However, the killer posted a new Snapchat story which showed that he was already driving away from the area. The authorities still could not trace his IP address, but they were able to find hints on his clip. Based on the signage on the street, they rushed to the scene and blocked the road. However, it was all a part of Ghost.X's plan. The story was a timed post, and the pictures were not recent. He effectively misled them, and this gave him enough time to execute his next crime. They alerted the other officers in the city when they figured out that the posts were fake. Unfortunately, Ghost.X was always one step ahead. Since Barry had mentioned the name of his establishment he was working at, he decided not to go to work for a couple of days. We kept in touch ever since that day. He was so afraid that he unfollowed Ghost.X in every social platforms, but he advised me to keep on following the killer so we would have an idea what he was up to. In that way, it would be easier to avoid him. He was also in touch with his friend at the bar, and he asked him to keep an eye on any unfamiliar face who might visit the place. Our plan to keep our distance from the killer seemed efficient enough to remain safe, but Barry overlooked one particular detail. While he was forwarding the snaps of random strangers from his friend at the bar, his snap map was turned on, which revealed the location of his home. Barry immediately turned it off. After he forwarded a picture of a random man in the bar, his messages suddenly got deleted and he was signed out. His account was hacked by Ghost.X, and he was reading our conversation the entire time. To make matters worse, he already knew Barry's address ever since he replied to the forum thread. He tried calling his phone, but it was out of reach. Few moments later, I received a personal snap message from Ghost.X himself. Just like before, it was captioned "real or not." The image that accompanied the question immediately sent chills down my spine. It was a picture of Barry's doorway, and the next message was a video clip of Barry who was desperately pleading for his life. I immediately called the police and showed them the messages. They rushed to Barry's house, but they were too late. There were traces of blood on the floor, but Barry was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps the last picture of a man that he forwarded to me was indeed the killer himself. When Ghost.X realized that his picture was taken, he deleted the entire conversation. Unfortunately, the flash was off so Barry's friend wouldn't be discovered. The image was too dark to see his face, and it was practically useless for the police. The next night after the incident, Ghost.X posted a Snapchat story. He was holding a glass jar containing eyeballs, and I threw my phone out of fear when I realized who they belonged to. Shortly after, my phone received a notification. My hands were shaking as I reluctantly checked what it was. With the caption, "Real or not," Ghost.X sent me a picture of Barry's dead body with his eyes gouged out. I contacted the authorities as fast as I could, and I received another message again while I was on the phone with them. It was a screenshot of my snap map indicating the location of my house. The authorities advised me to lock my doors until they arrive. I replied to Ghost.x and told him that I already contacted the police, and he simply replied with a laughing emoji. I looked outside the window and saw a gray van parked across the street. Few moments later, a tall man wearing a skull Halloween mask stepped out of the van with a chainsaw in his hands. It didn't matter if I locked the doors since he could force his way in anyway. I told the police about the situation and they told me to block the entryways with something big and heavy. I frantically moved my cabinet and leaned it against the door, and then I pushed my refrigerator against the window. All the while, I was hearing the killer throttling his chainsaw as if he was mocking my efforts to keep him out. I locked myself inside my room and I could hear him trying to force his way through the door. I also dumped a bunch of metal items such as repair tools inside the cabinet to make it heavier, and it was giving him a hard time to cut through all of it. After a few minutes, the sound of his chainsaw suddenly stopped. I looked through the window and saw him walking back to his van. Perhaps he realized that the police might arrive before he could get to me, and he decided to drive away. The officers arrived shortly after. Unfortunately, the killer got away. I moved out of the house on the following day. I deleted all of my social media accounts and even replaced my phone to make sure that Ghost.x wouldn't be able to trace my location again. After the incident, his social media accounts were deleted and he was never seen again.